be shared. We pray, oh God, that you will continue to allow us to advance the field of healthcare to do the greatest good for your people who you have given us the privilege to serve. We thank you and we praise you in all things. This I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So this morning, we are pleased to have with us today Dr. Desiree Cox to present to us. So for those of you who may not know who Dr. Cox is, it is my pleasure to introduce her to you. Dr. Desiree Cox is a Rhodes Scholar, medical doctor, creative artist, and internationally recognized thought leader in longevity, translational science, and future health innovation. Educated at McGill University in Canada, Oxford University, the UK, and Cambridge University, the UK, Dr. Cox is the first Rhodes Scholar from the Bahamas and the first woman Rhodes Scholar from the British Caribbean. She is the founder and CEO of HEALinc and HEALinc Global Summit. She lives in New York and the Bahamas. Over the past decade, Dr. Cox has spearheaded the establishment of an ethical model in the Bahamas that fosters global access to advanced longevity and regenerative therapies for patients all over the world. She chaired the National Stem Cell Ethics Committee between 2018 and 2024, spearheading the development and now implementation of the 2024 Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Act. Dr. Cox's experience in healthcare consulting includes consulting for biotech companies and major pharmaceutical companies, including Amgen, GSK, and Novartis, on pipeline therapeutic products and medical devices. In October 2017, she was honored by Oxford University as one of 6 alumni to have their portrait hung in the Great Hall of Pembroke College. She was also a presenter at the 2018 Vatican Unite to Cure conference. A visionary thinker, Dr. Cox was also one of the architects of the urban renewal initiatives in the Bahamas. At the 40th Independence celebration in 2013, the Bahamas government honored Dr. Cox by issuing a 70-cent stamp into circulation bearing her photograph. So it is indeed an honor to have Dr. Cox with us today, presenting on the topic of creating health, new developments and opportunities in healthy longevity and regenerative medicine. Please welcome Dr. Desiree Cox.
Good morning, everyone. So can you allow me to share my screen? And that will allow my slides to come up. Okay, I don't see it yet.
You should be able to share your screen.
Okay, let's give it a go. Can everyone see? No, I don't think you can see the screen.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Oh, you can. Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm never sure what people can see from this end. So thank you very much for that wonderful invitation and for that wonderful introduction. Can I just ask who's in the house today so that I know who I'm talking to? Mainly MDs. Who else is here? I can see broadly on the screen. Um, Mainly MDs. Any nurses? No? Okay, perfect. So,
So,
um, let me get a little oriented. Bear with me while I try that again. Okay. The first thing I want to say is today is mainly a series of highlights on some of the things that we will be talking about at the 2025 HEALinc Summit. The summit was started in 2018, and the focus of the summit really has been to um, connect the dots between longevity and regenerative therapies and the current paradigm. Um, each year since 2018, we present have invite top tier speakers in the field, scientists, clinicians, sometimes citizen scientists, as we call them, who have and investors who have uh, become very literate in the sciences, particularly in the longevity and regenerative therapies, and are either CEOs and founders of cutting edge therapeutics or companies doing that, or have become advocates in the field. So the summit, this is the fifth year of the summit. We also embed young students, medical students, nursing students in the summit in our Bridging the Future program so that they can see the future, they can get a sense of what is on the pipeline, and create career paths that really speak to what is now as opposed to what they'll be getting in medical school, which is often what is past or what is about to be past, and in many cases will be ancient history by the time as they come to practice. And that's no disrespect to medical students, medical schools. This is a challenge all over the world with the speed at which the field is increasing or evolving, and also the pace of medicine. Um, so um, that's the background. So the first thing I would say to you is when you get off this call, please go online and register. The first day of the summit is Sunday. We start 11:30 to 1 o'clock, or 1:30, I believe, um, with our Bridging the Future workshop with our medical students, where they get to speak, they get to get updates on their career possibilities in their own session. And the actual opening ceremony begins precisely at 2 and goes on through 6. And you can see, go online and you can see the agenda for what will be discussed. I mentioned before that we're in the midst of a paradigm shift. And I would say that that affects education, what will come onto your doorstep, and what you will even be thinking about when it comes to prescribing and seeing patients. It's actually a confluence of innovations that are shaping the next paradigm of health, and I'm calling it the next paradigm of health and life because it's those boundaries, those buckets, those boxes that we had medicine in, health in, and the rest of life are crumbling, they're disintegrating, and you're seeing this confluence of innovations, many of them in longevity enhancing therapeutics, but also in artificial intelligence, reimbursement, insurance, personalized health. Drones are being used to deforest areas, tissue engineering, all the technologies that make these things possible in medicine and regenerative health are also operating in the fields around them. Paradigms are messy. Okay, so that's the we often want um, things to be structured, You come to the clinic at a particular time, you see patients at a particular time, and there's a level of flexibility in clinical practice medicine that is allowed, or in governments that's allowed. But mainly the great force is trying to control, trying to keep things in what is known, what is proven, what is, you know, vaguely acceptable, what is unproven. Those boxes are completely blurred. You will notice they're blurred in all areas of life, but that's particularly uncomfortable for people in the medical profession. Let me see if I can make these. No, that's not what I wanted. Forgive me. Um, and so this really is uncomfortable for people. Forgive me, I'm going to scroll up to my earlier slides. Um, but I need you to be aware of it as it is a driver for the longevity pathway. So you have the Bloomsburg, you have the Washington Post, you have Global Wellness Institute issuing, $7 trillion issue. You have The Economist, and you have a number of full editions in the last couple of years that have been either focused on enhancing human capacity, cellular reprogramming, or the science quest to reverse aging. What I want to highlight is as follows. The shift and focus towards the regenerative therapies has a couple of underlying themes. And the underlying themes are that the mechanisms of aging, epigenetic changes, mitochondrial dysfunction, cross-linking, DNA damage, and loss of proteostasis, that's the homeostatic conditions that make sure that proteins keep their form. And when that breaks down, it's the beginning of a whole range of different disease issues. Those mechanisms that have been found to be associated with aging are the same mechanisms that are associated with a bucket of diseases that are now being described as diseases of aging diseases. That's your cardiovascular conditions, your Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, etc., and many more. So that's a recategorization of where you would see disease and illness. The second thing I want to highlight is the need to expand your whole person vision. And that means restructuring the way you see illness and wellness, and the way you see the body and mind. So increasingly, when you see the strategies behind new therapeutic applications that are out, um, and the therapeutic applications kind of pushed out the boat and began to escalate from about 2012 or 2013, after Shinya Yamanaka won the Nobel Prize for his work in the stem cell industry. But many of the new technologies that are proving to be successful are seeing themselves as redefining the mind body landscape. So at the summit, you will be hearing about a technology that has FDA authorization that will be coming to the Bahamas, where the technology itself is redefining the brain's thermal landscape, because the brain is actually very sensitive to temperature and protein production with temperature. And so many of the uh, illnesses, Alzheimer's being an example, which are associated, or in part, with a dysfunction in proteostasis, that you can cause some reversal of that by altering the brain's thermal landscape. Many therapeutics that are dealing with aging, I think in terms of redefining the brain's temporal landscape. So you now have biological time, chronological time, and the immune system being a big part of that. So that's another way of thinking, instead of just thinking of this disease or that disease, cardiovascular or not, and listing diseases, and thinking of interventions in terms of targeted interventions. The new and next paradigm is taking the view of redefining seeing the whole mind body brain landscape, which also includes your immediate environment, psychological environment, as well as physical environment, and altering or hacking, intervening at different ways, at different aspects of the system to shift the landscape of the mind body. So, I've already touched on a couple of those areas, but there are a few things I want to say a bit more about, and that will be discussed at the summit around that come out of the hallmarks of aging. As all of this begun to kind of just see it as explode in terms of the knowledge um, exploration and increase around longevity, uh, enhancing therapeutics, what is known as applications, where something has shown promise on the bench, and people have moved very swiftly to make it into a clinical application stroke treatment that can be used to intervene. Um, in in the exploration of that, Cell, the journal Cell, began to structure, uh, think of how we're going to structure this new field. Think of it in terms of hallmarks of aging. In 20 last year, um, they updated their initial article about that, which was 10 years 10 years before. And so you have about 12 hallmarks of aging. Some people will have more, so I've seen up to 16. Be that as it may, these are areas where if you can intervene at the area, you can potentially see a deceleration or an interruption or a resting of aging. Um, so they become trackers of that, and it is possible to intervene. Um, and No intervention and just tracking biomarkers that live within these areas will be trackers of how fast the aging process is occurring. So you can read them. I'm not going to read them over, but the ones in purple, I'm going to say a little bit more about here. Um, when you look at the one way, and I mentioned the temporal landscape, one way of seeing all of this has been to look at and intervening, has been to look at the brain's central clock. So the brain has a central clock. We know our bodies are um, a series of circadian rhythmic uh, processes that work in symphony and it is determined the brain does have a central clock. The brain's clock, uh, which is based in the hypothalamus, is you can see calcification of that over time. That clock is connected to all the other clocks and that's where I go back to that previous slide, your hormonal processes, all of those, your sleep processes, all of those are connected to that clock. And also your metabolic processes are connected to that clock. So it is estimated, as you can see from that immune function chart, that around uh, uh, that you're going up until about 20 or 30, around 30 to 45 is when you start to see that decline in immune function. And you also see greater susceptibilities to cancer diseases, etc. And many of those are now thought to be connected to the changes that are happening at the central clock level. But you can intervene in those changes at the central clock level, and that'll be discussed at the summit with various interventions that are uh, not just off the shelf, but are really showing great promise and available. Um, but you can also intervene further down in the mechanism. So you will see the metabolic changes that everyone notices with aging, and we'll talk about those in a minute. You can intervene at those levels. So I just want to highlight that. The other thing I want to highlight is the excitement around cellular reprogramming. There and the Bahamas and a very important fundamental, actually, first in man study in that area was actually done in the Bahamas, uh, ethically approved under the Stem Cell Act. And I'm expecting the paper to be published in that some time ago in the near future, where there was a one took the cells of an old person. The five participants were about in their 80s, were all of their in their 80s actually, and co-cultured them with the cells with younger cells um, over a 7 day period, then re-entered them into the body, and those people were tracked over a 5 year period. All of them actually, many of them, all of them actually got COVID and recovered very quickly from COVID. Um, and the tracking is still going on. But cellular, there are now many different ways of thinking about cellular reprogramming and other potential ways of bringing it about. And there is a clinical trial being conducted at this point at the Salk Institute, um, and it's already been shown proven in mice. Um, the question is the length of the effect. So those are the Yamanaka factors that you would have seen and heard about. This is the pathway you should be expecting to see cellular rejuvenation, based on cellular reprogramming technologies out by next year, uh, and uh, that's just park that. You're going to want to hear more about that and how that will be coming out at the summit, which we'll be discussing. And it's going to be very important for clinical practice all over the world. Then I mentioned, I highlighted senolytics. It's thought that in the body over time, our ability to break down old cells, cells, when we're functioning well, they have their life. And when it's time for them to go, it's like, the garbage collector comes in, munches them up like the Pac-Man film and gets rid of them. Those functions, apoptosis functions, get more sluggish over time. And so, what has emerged as applications in the area are drugs called, or they're mainly supplements at this stage, called senolytics, but there are other kinds of senolytics where, on a monthly basis, again, the cyclic process of the body, you would take those senolytics and and thus encourage your body to get rid of things that it would normally have gotten rid of. The reason you want to get rid of senolytics, of old dead cells are called zombie cells, is because they hang around and create the conditions for chronic inflammation. Um, so another way of intervening has been through um, particular products like thymosin alpha 1. Um, uh, Another way, I've already talked about the diabetic syndrome. And I want to just highlight a little bit about gene editing. Uh, in 2020, and actually it was December 2023, and definitely live by 2024, the FDA approved two gene therapies for sickle cell anemia. I was presenting at a conference on precision medicine in May of last year, where one of the people who were in that trial, in one of the trials, was telling his story. It was a very powerful patient story of a young man who had very had lots of adverse events as a result of his sickle cell and the associated addictions that go with that, um, and was now telling a story of being completely pain free, on no pain meds, about to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And in fact, the period between when he had the gene therapy and when the effect of disappearance of pain was only a 2 week period. Uh, the challenge with many of these therapies, especially the gene therapies, is, as you will probably know, the price. Right now, the price is something like, I think, 250,000 per person, and so the issue for gene editing and gene therapies is now not whether they're possible, but is how to have them be affordable. Um, you're also going to hear presentations at the summit about the phenomenal and very powerful work that is happening in disc degeneration and the use of cellular products to turn that around. And then finally, I want to say a little about chronic stress as a major hallmarker. We've always had the instinct, if not the kind of associated knowledge of chronic stress and aging. Increasingly, there is very strong biomarker evidence around accelerated telomere shortening and chronic stress. So each of us has about 20,000 base pairs, telomeres, being at the end of at the DNA chromosome. We're about maybe 20,000 base pairs before we're born. By the time as we're born, it's down to 15. By the time as we're in middle life, it's down to 10. By the time as it gets to 5,000 base pairs at the end, you're on your way to death. So telomere, one of the things that is known that must be cracked in order for anything that you're doing in the uh, anti-aging, healthy longevity area um, to have a to to stick, is that you have to crack uh, um, reducing the speed of telomere shortening. Uh, Various attempts to lengthen telomeres have been in place. That's questionable, but certainly slowing the speed of telomere shortening is one of those rate limiting steps. Once the telomeres are down to maybe 5,000 base pairs or close to it, you will start to get DNA unraveling and the instability that makes life untenable. So it's a my bottom line is a very strong marker um uh of uh aging, unhealthy or healthy aging, and its strong association with chronic stress makes the psychological interventions around aging even more powerful, because those are uh training. You can call it neoplastic, neuroplastic training of your mind that you can that are, I wouldn't say they're cheap, they're not free because they take time, but they're not they don't have the price points that many of the new therapies have. And you can there's very strong increasing evidence of showing the way you can turn uh, many of the drivers of unhealthy longevity around through um, diet, through food, through physical exercise, which we know reduces BDNF, increases BDNF, and through mental stress management. So the markers are there. That is a challenging uh, task for people living a modern life. We all know that, but all of the evidence very strongly shows the way in which that is a remains a powerful way of um, managing longevity. I wanted to now open the floor for questions. I wanted to just today give you some brief highlights. It's not possible to cover this field. in 30 minutes, not even 30 days. Um, but in a 3 day period in which you are immersed in the sciences, in the presentations that are presented to be understandable and accessible to ordinary people as well as clinicians. And that's not an easy um, uh, path to walk, but the presentations uh, do a very good job of that because it's a new field even for people in the healthcare profession. It's a new field for everyone, and it's a field that's got a lot of excitement around it. It's a field that already has a lot of products, applications available, and so it's really critical to understand what's kosher, what's and what's not. It's going to be important for you to be at the summit Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, if you can't physically come, to go online and register for a virtual ticket so that you can take in that information. And the final reason why it is very important for this summit moving forward is speaking about the 2024 Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Act. So the 2024 Regenerative Therapies Act builds on the Stem Cell Act. It was discovered when we chaired the Stem Cell Ethics Committee way back from I was chair from 2018 until 2023. It began in 20 the first meeting began in 2014. Right from the beginning, it became clear that the therapeutics that what we were being asked to review went beyond stem cells and cellular therapies, but fit broadly in the category of regenerative therapies right from the beginning. And so and there are many other areas that need to be managed that are slightly outside the scope of an ethics committee. They relate to monitoring. They relate to, are you doing what you said you would do in the protocol? They relate to other areas of marketing, etc. And so the 2024 Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Act builds on the learnings and the knowledge of that decade where about 1,500 patients were treated with stem cells and related regenerative therapies in the Bahamas. It builds on that knowledge, establishing a board, a longevity and regenerative therapies board, and an ethics committee, thus allowing the ethics committee to only focus on scientific merit, ethics, and uh, uh, and safety of therapeutics, whereas the board is looking at the broader picture. That application process for that will be on through an online portal that will be launched at the summit, where you will hear about the public-private partnership, where the portal is being developed by a private company. The portal will be available and ready. It's going to be just kind of a heads up, will be in its testing phase immediately after the summit. But that the summit is where if people are interested in putting in an application to do regenerative or stem cell or any longevity enhancing therapy in the Bahamas, this is where they will do it. Why that is relevant for Bahamian healthcare providers is the law specifically requires partnership with healthcare providers. So there are unique opportunities available to Bahamian healthcare providers, Bahamian people in the medical profession, not just because of what's potential what the potential is for your patients, but also what the potential is for the therapeutic services you can offer patients and the partnerships that your practice can engage in that will bring revenue to your practice and allow expansion of the services that you're able to bring to local people. In order to partner in that way, you have to understand the field. You have to get a feel for the field. You have to get a feel for who are the leaders in the field. You have to get a sense of where the trends are. You can get that up to a point through your YouTubes, through your publications, but we all know that the speed uh, and the way knowledge is evolving makes that very hard to do on a busy for a busy practitioner, a busy physician, a busy anyone in the current global context. And also, what is missed is the sense and the flavor and the trends of the field. Those There's no substitution for in-person connection for that. And if you can't do in-person connection, to come online and connect with what's online, because unlike many of your major conferences, and this the HEALinc is a global conference now, unlike many of the A4Ms, etc., which will not be geared to therapeutics that are on their way to your doorstep, or actually even available to you in your landscape, but will be um, open to a wide range of med techs, biotechs, cellular technologies, not all of which are relevant to you, and some of them are not yet at the stage of being translated to for human beings. You go to those major conferences, it's like a fire hose, a lot of information, not all of it is relevant for you. The HEALinc Summit is designed to be relevant for people who are interested in translational science, meaning they are particularly interested in the part where very cool stuff that you find out in labs is translated and available to the bedside, or are engaging with that side of medicine, i.e., they are wanting to make those therapeutics available to patient, and also people who want to make uh, therapeutics that are maybe available in the US that may be FDA authorized, also available outside of the United States for a wide range of reasons, including travel restrictions, for which many people might not be able to come to the United States to get the treatment that is available. A wide range of reasons, companies are looking to try and make those therapeutics available to people outside the United States. The summit is specifically focused on those key areas which are directly relevant to you. And so it's a plug for the summit, but more importantly, it really is a plug for you having access to the trends, the knowledge, the information that is going to affect your practice, and I know is already affecting your practice, will most certainly be exciting your patients who will be using these things, acquiring these therapeutics, participating in these applications, whether they tell you about it or not, or maybe approaching you and asking you, what about this, what about that, why don't you prescribe that for me? And the answer, it's not proven, we don't know that much about it, is just not going to fly. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to present this to you. The contraption I had that was meant to keep my computer stable has fallen. And so I've been literally, you know, those waitresses, those waiters that are able to hold the plate right on the top of their hands. That's how my this computer's been poised for the last 40 minutes. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cox, for providing some very interesting and intriguing information to us. At this time, I will open the floor for any questions or comments that you may have for Dr. Cox.
So that either means I did a fantastic job or a terrible
All
job.
right. Yeah.
But I can hear someone
Hello.
piping
Can you
up
hear me?
questions.
Yes,
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Professor, for, sharing that very innovative perspective of what's happening in the Bahamas. Can you share with us any of the research that has happened over the last 10 years in the country? What innovation has happened here in our context?
Yeah, so there's a lot to say about that because a lot's happened. But thank you very much, Dr. Philippe, for the question. I shared one thing, which was the cellular reprogramming first in man study. I'm going to come at the question in a slightly different way to say that there are a number of stem cell therapies, particularly from Longeveron, that have been showing promise in cases of mild Alzheimer's and aging frailty. I believe up to about 200 patients, if not more, globally have been treated in that way. And they're now in phase 2, going into phase 3 clinical trials. There are other companies also. When companies were allowed to do and to make stem cell therapies available, the quality management requires that the testing, the sterility, the viability, the potency of those cells are tested in country after they've arrived and they've traveled in temperature controlled conditions. They've also got to be tested in country before they're made available to patients, so that you're able to see exactly what you're getting before you get it. There are various protocols for the use of stem cells for musculoskeletal conditions, as well as aging frailty, I already mentioned. We also have a phase 3 clinical trial for disc degeneration with the company Dysgenics. They're in phase 3. They have FDA breakthrough authorization for their technology, which is a cell-based technology. And their phase 3 study will be taking place in about 50 different countries, 50 different sites in the US. The Bahamas, the advantage of the structure of the law in the Bahamas does mean that if a patient looked at the phase 1 and phase 2 data for the use of this cell product for mild disc degeneration, patients over a 2-year period, and based on that, they moved into phase 3. So if you looked at that data, if you were a patient and you fell into the inclusion criteria and you said, hey, look, I don't want to be randomized, I really just want to get this treatment, you would be, they will be their partner for making that available is actually Doctors Hospital. There are many different partners. Partners are vetted, and once the relationship is solid and Health and Hospital Facilities Board approval is can be demonstrated, where the patient can get the intervention with the same protocol as they would be getting if they were in for the treatment, if they were in the clinical trial. So that the structure for that, for those who don't know, is called a registry. And so that is one of the strategies whereby many of these therapies that are available in the Bahamas and available in other countries, that's the window that they fit into. And they are therefore also available to you as clinicians and Bahamians who might have patients who fit into the inclusion criteria, who, you've treated them in the traditional way, you've exceeded all the means available, and there's an unmet need, and you're wanting to know if maybe there's a compassionate use for a compassionate option for a regenerative therapy for your patient for whom there's nothing else. We've approved a number of those kinds of cases. They've tended to come from a few of them have come from clinicians in the Bahamas, but they've tended to come from U.S. physicians. They could just as easily come from Bahamian physicians, provided you knew what was available in country. So the summit is a place for you to talk to people who are already have already an arm of what they're doing in the Bahamas as well as the U.S. And there, as I said, there are about 1,500 cases that were treated here in over that decade, and we're expecting that number to increase in the years to come.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a message in the chat, like intriguing updates. We'll hope to tune into the conference. And we have a question. How do you visualize the Bahamas health-wise going forward in the year 2040?
Oh, that's a pretty big question. And that's I would say it's a long time away, but we know time flies, so it's not that long away. Look, it's the US health
Going
profile from a patient perspective. Similar diet, similar food, similar habits, similar ways of life. And over the years, we've watched the Bahamas become more and more Americanized. Um, I think the country needs to really leverage what's being put in place through the Longevity and Regenerative Therapies Act. Other countries this size elsewhere would not have access to the therapies that we're describing, would not have access to them being in the at your doorpost in country. Um, and so the Bahamas needs to leverage its strengths for in service of the health of its people. Those strengths include well qualified healthcare providers. It is a country that has extremely well qualified, well trained healthcare providers. Who are you? Um, it so it needs to leverage that. It needs to leverage its physical environment, that is the oceans and the health benefits of the physical environment. It needs to also attend very closely to uh, the the accessibility and the encouragement of diet and exercise. I say that all with some caution because everyone knows on a public health level they're important. Um, and whenever you try to when others have tried to make interventions in the area of um, making healthy foods more available, making them more accessible, bringing down costs, taking certain things out of the bread basket, it's been um, you know, with huge resistance. Broad public health level, making those interventions are critical, but they have proven to also be their own barriers. So the Bahamas needs to find ways of intervening at the individual personal leadership level for different communities where people have taken on their being and expanding their full potential and in the world, and to manifest your full potential requires a knowledge of your mind body and the training of your mind body to make the steps, make the changes that are needed for that. So those kinds of leaders who will likely be citizen leaders and um, and drive traffic towards what they're doing will become really important in the future. So I think the Bahamas has a potentially positive future if it can leverage those strengths and use the fact that advanced longevity and regenerative therapeutics, many of them work, almost all of them actually, work best when done in collaboration with what we know are strong, sound public health habits. But they can also nudge and help people to get the small wins or the early wins needed to continue with the diet exercise process. So, instead of seeing it in either or the different buckets, the public health this or the other, I think a symphony, a confluence of all of those things working together is going to be the way forward, and leveraging all the strengths in all of the areas that we can. That will make a huge difference. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. We have another question inside the chat. What level and type of skills will healthcare providers need to participate in this industry?
So that's such a great question. You just need to come to the summit to answer that, because that really, that question could be its own conference. But I'm going to say a few quick things about that. There's quite a bit of hand waving around AI, and AI is going to do this and it's going to fix that. And I say it's hand waving because, although be very clear, AI interventions are all over health and medicine and having all kinds of impacts. Not all of them you will know about. That's really that's a way of, let's see that as a way of organizing and speeding up your creative use of knowledge. So one thing that will be discussed at the summit is the way in which AI can be used to help people who have an intervention and have created a product navigate the regulatory system. And it's a very important lecture to be at if you're looking to not spend millions. If you have an idea and you have something that you're creating and you're looking to not spend millions on regulatory experts to do that, or you want to accelerate the development. So I think the way to see yourself as a healthcare provider for the future is to see yourself in collaboration and in connection with a team. The way to come about it, if you're already in the profession or even about to get into the profession, is to now work at identifying what your you've got the basic medical education, or and that may be that you went to medical school or you didn't. You can have a PhD. You can be finding yourself at some place in some area of the health landscape. You want to start with looking back at your track record and doing a kind of self-analysis to identify what your strengths are. Where is your unique little niche? Okay. My niche, for instance, and it's based on what I care about, um, lives around the area of uh, translational science, particularly the art and science of translational science, which involving all the stuff that I would say to people, I use my psychiatry every day. I just don't get the copay. So the everything that you will learn about how to, the way the mind and the body works, comes into the process whereby a therapeutic gets from the bench to the bedside. It's not really just about passing some regulatory approval here or there. It's about all the pieces that human beings, because it's a human process, put in the way of making something available. So I am somebody who really loves, and I'd like to think I'm good at, but one of my strengths is in a kind of systems thinking, a kind of engineer thinking, the way systems come together, the way the pieces come together. I can see them. I can see new ways of them. I can see new ways of navigating and navigating from one system to the other. So given that, and there are other strengths, but given that which is has a unique place and a unique need, I kind of I carve this path. for myself, which is a combination, by the grace of God and a lot of major and minor miracles. Uh, that's how that's happened. And I talk about creating health because it's also, for me, a blend of science and creativity. So the first thing I would say anyone in this profession, wherever they are in the profession, needs to do is try to get really good at putting your finger on what is the area that is a strength that it will be something that you love and would do even if you weren't paid for it. That's a really good way I have found of determining, having a sense of where your soul desire lives. You would want it and you would desire it even if you couldn't have it. You would want to do it even if you weren't paid for it. It feels to you like it isn't like work, it's like breathing. Okay, so find that area that has that resonates for you. Try to work with some people and get some help, or if you can do it yourself, see where there's a need for that in medicine, whether you're trained in whatever your training is, see where the need is. And then your next job is to find the members of your team that are that help um, make new therapies or make therapeutic products or services available to people who need it most for the advancement of their health. That's broadly what you're going to end up, health and well-being and thriving. You're going to end up with that as a definition of your what health and medicine is. Find your small team. It could be 2, 3, 4 people, and you could involve an AI as a team member. As a team member, and that's the way you're going to want to see um, yourself evolving in medicine and health in collaboration with a team. Find people in your team who have strengths in other areas that complement yours. Find people in your team where there's diversity, not the same. Don't create an echo chamber where everyone thinks just like you. People who are actually difficult and slightly frustrating to deal with are exactly the people you also want them on your team, because they're also going to stretch you. And see yourself as a creator, an innovator, and a provider of services and products for health and well-being and thriving through and navigated by a team. That is going to be the way to uh, have a great life and career in medicine and health, because it's going to be a way that helps you not try to be doing everything yourself, which is a high stress situation to be in, which would not be good for your health and will not provide the best service and product for the people you want to serve. And it is going to allow you to uh, be connected with all the key areas of change and evolution in health and wellness. I would say, that's the way to rethink how to move through in the profession.
Okay, thank you. I'm just checking the chat again.
I have time for just one more question, and then I'm actually going to have to jump off as well. So uh, that just kind of to put that in your.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions in the chat. There is a link for the upcoming conference. So you can go ahead and click on that link for the upcoming conference. I don't see any raised hands. So with that being the case, I would just like to thank you again, Dr. Cox, for being here this morning and sharing your wealth of information with us. Thank you for opening our eyes to this aspect of innovative medicine, and we look forward to wonderful things ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you inviting me and the opportunity to share this with you. It's a heart and life and soul product. It's always great to share this information with you, and I really want the best for our people, for our Bahamian generations to come. And so would love to see you all there at the summit and see you all thriving and being a part of this next paradigm of health. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming out this morning and being a part of this morning's education. And we will see you again at our next session for continuing medical education, which, as you know, is the second Wednesday and last Friday of every month. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay. Have a great day. Bye, guys.